Speaking next, we have Nevada Ramstall. Nevada is a senior security researcher at CrowdStrike with over 17 years of experience in cybersecurity. His career has covered everything from security analyst to penetration testing to security architect. His talk, SquarePhish, turning QR codes into single sign-on tokens, shows a new frontier for phishing. If you want to try it out, the QR codes are right there. I would request everyone to give a shot and just scan them once. Please join me giving a big hand to Nevada.
All right. Quick intros. So Cam couldn't make it. Cam wrote most of the code for the last version, so I give all the credit to him. We both work together at CrowdStrike. Cam's been more on the offensive end lately. He works as for the Cloud Purple team essentially right now. I do research for our next-gen SIM product. So I'm going to start with old phishing techniques, right? This is kind of how we used to do it. Credential phishing, fake web pages. We grab username and password. Obviously, like MFA has made that a lot harder. Payload phishing, PDF.exe used to work. It doesn't work anymore. So we went on to more advanced techniques where you'd hide the payload. There's still some of those out there, like HTML smuggling, things like that. Spear phishing, where you're very targeted and you're maybe using some social engineering. And then OAuth phishing, which kind of leads us into SquarePhish. Some newer updated techniques would be like an invisible reverse proxy, like Evil Jinx. And then device code phishing, which is what we're going to talk about today. So threat actors are moving more towards these. These are post-authentication phishing attacks where you don't need a username and a password anymore. You're just going after the tokens. So here's some key concepts for OAuth 2.0. Really, client ID and client secret and access token and refresh tokens are the one we use. For the type of phishing we're going to talk about today, device code phishing for Microsoft, you don't need a client secret. We're using something called the public authentication flow. So what are some legitimate use cases for device code flow, right? The one I'm most familiar with is like a Roku. So like when you're signing into something on your TV, you don't have to enter the password of the remote. A lot of people use them to authorize command line tools, and then also like other devices that don't have a keyboard, like medical or IoT. So I wanted to quick throw up some prior art. If you're interested in device code phishing, there's a lot of resources out there. So Nestori Semina was the first one that made the technique public. Cam and I had wrote Fish and Suits originally, and we were waiting to release that, and then Nestori made it public, and we released the tool.
The name, Fish and Suits?
Fish and Suits, yep. Okay. That was our tool.
What's the difference between that and GoFish?
I'll go over that a little bit. Jenko Wong talked about it publicly at DEF CON. The community really grabbed a hold of it when Bobby Cook released the Art of the Device Code Phish and Token Tactics. Reverse Shell did a dynamic device code phishing, and that's right around when we released SquarePhish 1.0, which waited until the user interacted with the email. And then this last one is important because this technique was released last week, in the middle of the week, and we included it in SquarePhish now. So why is device code flow good for phishing? It's because the user visits a legitimate Microsoft site, so they don't visit a malicious link. The attackers can initiate the process, and it bypasses network controls like URL filters. But why isn't it good? So when we had Fish and Suits, we aimed for SMS phishing to really get around the 10 or 15-minute window that device code phishing provides. But it was tricky, right? It was tricky to get authorization to actually text people on a red team. And historically, single sign-on has not been available. All right, so QR codes. This entire slide is really just so I can have the dancing GIF. Everybody knows what they are these days. And everybody probably knows where that one takes you. But they're useful to attackers, right? They hide data. You can hide a malicious URL. This particular one contains a short fuzzing string, so if you fed this one to a QR code scanner and the QR code scanner wasn't properly checking the data, it could cause a 500. All right, so I'm going to talk about kind of SquarePhish 1.0, how it originally worked. And it's kind of a complex process, so I'm going to walk you through what it looks like to a user. So the attacker sends an initial QR code email. The user hopefully scans that email. And what they see when they scan the email is they're immediately redirected to the device code prompt from Microsoft. And this is Microsoft's legitimate website. On the back end, that GET request triggers the entire authentication flow from the attacker side. So we're contacting Microsoft, we're initiating the flow with the user account, and we're getting a code. Then we send that code to the user. They're already interacting with the QR code, and they have the code they need to authenticate. The user sees this when they authenticate with the code, and then on the attacker side, we get the credentials. So basically, the user never truly visits a malicious URL or enters their credentials there, although that first GET request that they scan from their phone is a malicious URL that triggers the auth process. So at this point we have tokens. We want to do something with them. So there's something called family of client IDs. So this is undocumented functionality within Microsoft tokens for Office 365. And all of these client applications listed there, you can swap out tokens for other tokens between the applications. So we had access to a lot of the victims' data at that point, right? We could check their email, we could check their OneDrive, we could go back and forth through them. It was still only programmatic. So we created a subtool for SquarePhish, and this is still more like version 1.0, which is called refresh. And that would go through and really dump all that user's data. So you phish the user, you can dump all their data, you can use the tool to search their OneDrive, things like that. And so here's kind of the problems with version 1.0. You only had programmatic access, only FOCI tokens were really available, and we had no path to the ESTS auth cookie or the primary refresh token. So ESTS auth cookie is what Microsoft uses to authenticate in the browser. Primary refresh token is special. It's like on top of the other tokens, it's like a single sign-on token that lives on the computer of the user. And that primary refresh token gets you access to everything that user has in Microsoft Office 365. So Dirkjan Malima, he figured out how to use device code phishing to obtain that primary refresh token. So his research essentially allowed for tools like SquarePhish to use the Microsoft Authentication Broker client ID for that initial phish, and after that you have access to everything for that user. So me and Sapir Fedorovsky wrote a blog about this type of attack, and we wrote that back in the fall of 2024. And then earlier this spring, Microsoft released an article showing that threat actors are now using this technique in the wild to obtain the primary refresh token. So it's real and it's out there and it's happening. So we built it into SquarePhish 2.0. So we changed that authentication broker client ID to the default client ID. We automated Dirkjan Malima's broker authentication token to primary refresh token. Our friend from Japan, Yo-Yo Chudo, he included an ASCII QR code option. So instead of including it in the HTML as an image, it includes an ASCII QR code, and that bypasses some filters. All the old family of client ID stuff is still available. Cam rewrote a GUI for it because everybody wants a GUI. And we also implemented that last novel technique that came out last week. So a little more on the novel technique. So what Dennis did is he found a way to enter that authentication, that device code, on behalf of the client, and then he finds the authentication URL and redirects the victim to it transparently. So they never see it. It removes a step from device code phishing, and at the end of the demo, I'll show you, it's really slick. So here's some screenshots of the GUI. So this is just a dashboard. You can see how many emails you've sent. You can see how many QR codes have been scanned. And then you can see which credentials you've been captured. Obviously that one poor guy's getting it all the time. A configuration page, so we need to send emails, so you need an SMTP server, port, username and password, and then you have to point them back to your evil server. So that's test.squarefish.com on this one. And then there's also some email settings, so this is for that secondary email. And then here's our send email page, so you can do a single recipient or a list. There's an HTML body. And you can choose QR code, ASCII QR code, or URL link now. And there's a preview button there. And so this last option, the automatic authentication URL redirect, that is the stuff that came out last week where Dennis showed how we can make that very automatic for the victim. And then this is a Python script. So everything else is written in Go now. This is a Python script because we need Durkheim's road tool library in order to swap out that token. So that's how we go from the refresh token to the primary refresh token. All right, so a tool demo.
So the SquarePhish is now supporting the UI side because I'm on the beta. It seems mostly terminal side of this.
Yes, that's the old one.
Okay.
So we have a new one. There's a QR code at the end. Or if you scan one of the QR codes of those stickers.
I can't trust you now to do that.
All right. So like I said, we have the configuration page, or the dashboard, and then the configuration page. So you can see here where you enter your stuff. That's your server it comes back to. This is an HTML page for the body. And like I said, there's always there's a device code. You need to place that where you want the device code to go in your body. There's a preview that pops up. And I'll go to the send email page next, I believe. All right, so that's where the victim's email goes. This is the actual phishing email. And you can choose, like I said, QR code, ASCII code, or URL link, and you'll just need a special string in there, a replacement string. And they'll get that. And then on the bottom again is the new advanced stuff. So we're gonna send that email to the victim. So on the left-hand side is the victim. And they get an email, and then you'll see there it has a QR code in it. So off screen, the victim's gonna scan this QR code, which is gonna trigger the second email. So this is the more classic flow. You can see here, they got the second email with their code to enter. Now I'm gonna do it through the browser. On their phone, they're redirected to the actual page, but they enter the code. And this is all legitimately Microsoft's infrastructure and website, so there's nothing for them to be afraid of. And then they've authenticated, so they're done. And at that point over here, we can refresh. And we'll see we have a new token up there. So what I'm gonna do now is go in and I'm gonna look at their access codes. I'm gonna grab the refresh token and then I'm gonna feed it to that script I talked about. And what that script is gonna do is it's gonna walk through a process of essentially using Windows Hello for Business to register a new device, generate some keys, and then get that primary refresh token. So there's a warning, it walks through a few things. You can see the keys created. And then it cleans up and even deletes the device within their tenant for you. So now I'm going to use Durkheim's road tools or RoadTX to authenticate with that PRT via the browser. So you can see what it looks like for an attacker to use that single sign-on. So this is the command. I'm using RoadTX library. I'm using browser auth. I'm pointing it to office.com and I'm pointing to that PRT file. So you can see the new browser window pop up. This is the attacker. And this is the attacker with single sign-on. so this is access essentially to all their applications, not just their email, obviously. Now I did a second demo here of what this new flow looks like, the advanced or automatic authentication URL retrieval. So we're going to send an email, and I'm going to use just a URL, not a QR code in here, so I can demo it from the machine instead of the phone. But if they scanned a QR code from their phone, it would look like this on their phone essentially. But they get an email. If I click the link, you'll see there's a slight pause as the server does its thing in the background, but they're going to be redirected to an authentication URL. And there's the pause, but when they land, that is again Microsoft's infrastructure. They authenticate without any other interaction outside of allowing the Microsoft app, and then we have their tokens again. So, if anyone's brave and wants to scan the QR code, I have a server up and running. You can see what the authentication looks like, and you don't have to enter your credentials.
Is this working in Apple, like Macs, Linux environment too?
Yes, so it's your phishing Office 365 users, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of a requirement because we're using a lot of Microsoft stuff on the back end, but yeah, it doesn't matter the device. Did anybody scan? Nobody's brave enough? I want to know if it works.
He's ready to
Okay, you don't have to log in though. Don't log in. I don't want your creds. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about detection and prevention strategies, right? Like how do we stop device code phishing? Because like I said, threat actors are using this technique now, and that with that stuff that was released last week, like they're going to be on that really, really quick. So the best thing we can do is look for that app ID. So this is the Microsoft Authentication Broker Client ID. And when they're using that ID with a combination of device code, I'd say like in 90, maybe 95% of environments, that's not good. Some companies will have that happen in their environment on purpose or legitimately, but most of the time it's not good. So if you're using this, if you're a defender, if you're a blue teamer, I'd suggest looking in your environment. And maybe there's one or two users using it legitimately, like sysadmins or something. Maybe use an allow list to kind of keep track of that and know who's doing it. And then it's probably worth taking a step further and just removing that client ID and just looking for device authentication happening in your environments at all. And same thing, an allow list of these, 3 users are actually doing device code auth, and they're the only ones that ever should is a good rule. Conditional access policies. So again, if you can in your environment, just block device code flow completely, that's good. If you can limit access to trusted locations, require VPN, that's always good. It becomes a little bit trickier with the mobile devices, obviously. This kind of gets into a little bit what you were asking about, where like, can this happen from Linux? Can this happen from Mac? So the technique and the attack can. Conditional access policy really allows for some fine-grained tuning, which makes it very complex. So depending on what conditional access policies are applied, it may or may not work if they're having more stringent requirements around who gets to join and not. When we join the fake device, it looks like a Windows device, and that's really what we're doing when we get that PRT, is we are joining a new device to the network, or a fake device to the network, and creating certificates for it. And then, the last one's just about sign-in risk. Really, I'm not an expert enough to really talk too much on that, but that is one of the recommendations out there, so leave it up there. So that's the new URL, if you want it.
I go manual into it. I don't have a dare to take a picture.
Does anybody have any questions? Anybody want to see anything additionally?
Yeah, and you mentioned, so this is one tool that's how the UI thing, and then after that you get the token and use it in another Python application to register. What's the, do you know the cutoff for that one by chance?
So the
was it Gimme something?
Gimme PRT. This is in the repo for our SquarePhish tool.
Oh, so I can do the submodule right there?
Yep. And then, but The part from the demo where I actually popped the browser open, that is RoadTX. And I think that I have that in so right here, RoadTX. After we get that primary refresh token, we're going to go back and use RoadTX to actually authenticate. Durkian has like an entire library for authenticating and interacting with Microsoft Office 365.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Is there any possibility to get the slide?
Yes. Chat with me afterwards, I'll send it to you.
I appreciate it.
Yep. That's it. Thank you.